You are listening to the Rewards Canada podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 105 of the Rewards Canada podcast. In this episode, we will be discussing the brand new Swissport Aspire Air Canada Café lounge that just opened up at Billy Bishop Toronto Centre Airport. This is a special episode as we welcome back Rewards Canada's Jeff Fredericks and are pleased to also have Air Canada's Mark Nasr return for an interview. First off, let us all wish a warm welcome back to Jeff Fredericks. For our longtime listeners, you'll recall Jeff as the host of the podcast prior to the pandemic. For our newer listeners, Jeff actually spearheaded the launch of the Rewards Canada podcast way back in 2016, and he was the host for the first 66 episodes. Welcome back, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and it is great to be back, everyone. It's hard to believe, you're over 100 episodes already. That's terrific. Congratulations on that milestone.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I mean, thank you to you for for giving me or projecting this idea for us to do this way back. Oh gosh, I can't believe it's already been 7 years. The pandemic is really, the 2.5 years or so of the pandemic just really flew by and just changed everything. I just can't believe that we're this far beyond that already.
Well, I know, and it's funny, Patrick, because you and I, of course, kept in touch during the pandemic, and both of us came out the other end of it. But it feels like things are quite different right now, particularly with all the exciting travel activity that people are undertaking. I read a piece in the Globe and Mail not too long ago talking about this summer in particular is going to be pretty active on the travel front as people participate in what I guess they're calling revenge travel after all those
That's
years
right,
of not being able to get out, and so the airports are going to be jammed. But I think that's good news overall for the industry, isn't it? Just to see people getting back out there. I guess they're amping up their business travel as well. So overall, we're starting to finally see light at the end of the tunnel as it involves the industry. So. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is good to see travel rebounding to, a lot of pre-pandemic levels and in some cases record levels. We're seeing airlines with record profits, at least in the like Emirates and Singapore Airlines, just making crazy amounts of money now. And I think that's just indicative. Everybody having sat at home for 2 years, they really want to get out. And I think, some people did take it easy for the, perhaps even just the last 12 months, maybe, traveled once or twice and thought, okay, yeah, things are really working out. And now they're really, gung ho to get out there.
Well, it's funny, you and I, over the years of doing the podcast, we'd also occasionally share some of our own personal travel endeavors. You and your family are big travelers. My family this year, we've got a 2-week trip to Greece planned at the beginning of July, so we're excited to get out and do that. We had a big family trip planned for France just as the pandemic broke out and that we had to cancel. So this is our first time doing a big sort of European family vacation, and really looking forward to it. But I know we're going to be joined by hundreds of folks doing the exact same thing around the exact same time. So it's going to be a pretty crowded vacation, I imagine. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, July, August in Europe is definitely a very popular time to go. So yeah. You will not be alone.
No doubt.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, like I said, so why don't we jump right into the topic of this episode? And I think it kind of ties into what you and I were just discussing about, travel really rebounding. And a lot more people heading out to the airports, and the airports are getting busier. They're crazier. I mean, even the lounges are getting crazier. But I think, this new one, the topic of this episode, the new airport lounge that opened at Billy Bishop Toronto Centre Airport, may be a little different. I don't think we're going to see it, having these overcrowding issues like people lining up 45 minutes, for 45 minutes to get into a lounge. It is the new, like as mentioned, the Aspire Air Canada Café Lounge that is opened at Billy Bishop Toronto Centre Airport. And Jeff, you had the pleasure of attending the grand opening on June 1st. That was also the first day the lounge opened in public. To our listeners, you may have seen his photo tour post on the Rewards Canada blog. If not, I'll have a link on our podcast page at rewardscanada.ca/podcast, and also put the description below if you're enjoying this podcast on YouTube. And in that case, if you're on YouTube or on any of the platforms, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe button. It all helps the algorithms. It helps us, reach out to more people, and just makes, the message we're trying to get across to more people. And I'll thank everybody for doing so. So Jeff, what were your first impressions of the new Aspire Air Canada Cafe?
Well, Patrick, it's interesting because for those that haven't been in the airport, in Billy Bishop Airport, it's a real gem in the city of Toronto, just in terms of its convenience. I live in the west end of the city, and it takes me about 30 minutes door to door, which is just terrific. And once you get there, it's a small airport. Historically, I would say it's kind of got a reputation for being a just-in-time airport. In other words, people arrive just in time before their flight, and then off they go. Checking out this new lounge, that may very well change behavior, because it is something special. I mean, I think just aesthetically, the first impression is, love the modern look, love the artistic sort of touches that are throughout, love the well thought out utility of the space, both in terms of, workstations that you can sort of hop into. Every single table, every single seat that you sit down to, you can just plug something in if you need to. Those are all well sort of set out. And of course, there's some good private working space. You can book a meeting room there if you wanted to meet a colleague or several colleagues before. There's room for a sizable meeting room, as well as independent workstations. So I'd say overall, it is a real special addition to what I already call an amazing little airport.
Oh, that's awesome. And is there anything that you found that really stood out about the lounge? I mean, you've already explained, you gave your first impressions that there's a lot of great things about it, but is there, a couple things that really stood out to you?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because when you first enter the space, you're not entirely sure where to kind of gravitate towards, but then right in the center, of course, is this gorgeous bar that's all set up with what looks like, now mind you, it was a little early in the morning when I was there, so I wasn't reaching for a drink, but I can definitely see how that bar will be a magnet to draw people in, to converge around the space, and I think it will be an amazing draw in its own right. I think the other thing is that just the general aesthetic. It's a modern space. It's very clean. When you look at the offerings, the grab and go offerings are right there as you enter, so that's super convenient. And the other thing is the funky coffee machine. I don't know if you saw it in the photos that I shared, but it's a real treat being able to order a coffee on an iPad, wide variety of different styles of coffee, and then presto, there you go. And it was pretty darn delicious, I might add.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like I said, people can see your photos on the photo tour. I'll actually put them into the video version of the podcast as well. And we do have a video courtesy of Air Canada. It's a short, just under a minute or something, so we'll throw it in there as well. But yeah, like just from the photos, it does look like a very well thought out space, and just an excellent use of the space as well for people who will be using that airport. And it's funny, like you said, I think to our listeners who aren't familiar with the Island Airport, you kind of described prior to this who the typical user was, and it's kind of the just-in-time people just getting there just in time to jump on their flights, right? Because that's the whole premise of the service out of that airport is that it's a little bit different than your normal experience going to like Pearson or Montreal, Calgary, those type of airports. Um, Now you've used the airport prior, and now you've seen the lounge and see what it provides. Do you think it's going to change some of the usage of those users?
Well, I think it certainly could, Patrick, and I think part of the reason is that, um, again, if knowing that that space is available to you, if you were traveling with some business colleagues, maybe you're off to a meeting from Toronto, you're leaving Toronto, you're heading to Montreal. You might suggest to your colleagues, hey, why don't we arrive a little early? We can hang out in the lounge. We can actually get some work done. To me, that's an option that's now available to people courtesy of this new space. So, and I think it's a really good option. So, I think I could see it changing behavior just simply because of how attractive the space is and how high the utility of the space is.
Okay, yeah, cool. So, and that being said, though, would you say is it fair enough to say this is one lounge that may not though be inundated with, say, like your general credit card users, the people who have Priority Pass, Dragon Pass, who don't have the free access passes, and they would have to pay $30 US to enter it. Since you know if you are kind of running on that just-in-time schedule, do you think people are going to go half an hour early to pay roughly $40 Canadian to enter it, or do you think it's going to be more your Air Canada elites, the platinum card holders with unlimited access? Do you think it's going to be more those type of people?
Yeah, you know what? It's a good question. I don't know if people are gonna, fork out the cash to go early. That said, I think if you arrived at the airport and you peeked your head in and you looked at that space versus the space that the general sort of lounge space that's available to everyone, you may very well be compelled to pay the $40 just to take advantage of course the food and drink offering. But you may pay that $40 because it's a nice quiet space to get some work done or whatever the case may be, or a nice relaxing space as you prepare for your flight. So I think it's all going to be based on user experience. Once you've tried it once, I think it's going to be hard not to want to use it all the time. Every time you fly out of
No, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much almost anywhere. Once you get used to airport lounges, especially the nice ones, it's hard not to go to them and use them, even if you have to pay your entry fee to get into them, because it definitely makes it worthwhile. I mean, I know now a lot of lounges are crowded and noisy, but there are ones out there that you can still enter, and it is a little a diversion from the hubbub of the airport. And like you said, it's a lot of times it's unlimited food and drink. And I guess too, I mean, if you're at Porter Airport, I mean, or not Porter Airport, I'm giving it like Porter Airlines. If you're at Bailey Bishop Center Airport, the weather changes, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you're gonna have a delay, and that's when you will decide, oh yeah, my flight's delayed 2 hours. I'm gonna go pay that entry fee to enter it. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think, and that's what you have in your interview with Mark Nasr. You guys kind of discussed that as well. And like I said, you did have the chance to sit down with Mark, and it was actually in the lounge's private space there to interview him that you mentioned. And you kind of talked to him about this first ever collaboration for a lounge because Air Canada opened it with Swissport. And from what I can hear in your interview, Mark and the rest of the Air Canada team seem very excited about the lounge and trying out this partnership concept. Would you agree that was the general feeling from those involved and even those attending this grand opening event?
Yeah, for sure. I think folks were excited about this possibility. I mean, the space itself is unique, probably as far as airports go, because there wasn't really much by way of room to go it alone for Air Canada, from what I understand. So the partnership was kind of both out of necessity, but it was also an opportunity to look at potentially replicating it in other marketplaces. So I think that was the sense I got from Mark, is that they were open to sort of seeing how this went, with the possibility of perhaps doing something similar in other markets. I will say, I asked him about sort of what research he had on what Aeroplan members, for example, value in a lounge, and of course, food and drink were the top of the list on that front. So I got the sense, just by way of even looking at the offering, that they put a lot of thought into that as well. Everything from the premium spirits and beer and wine to, as I've already mentioned, a pretty impressive coffee machine and a wide variety of sort of baked goods and sandwiches and all that sort of stuff. That was definitely something Mark shared with me about the research, and it looks like these guys stepped it up, and members won't be disappointed. The other thing that Mark shared that I think is worth repeating is that there's a shared value connection between between Aspire and Swissport and Air Canada. And what I mean by that is both organizations care deeply about sustainability. That's definitely on display in this lounge. Users of the lounge are reminded throughout the space that this is a LEED certified space, that there's been a lot of thought in terms of both the materials that are used to build the space being sustainable, but also the way in which things are packaged. And this day and age, people care about that stuff, and clearly these two organizations do. So it's nice to see them aligned on that. What else can I tell you about that partnership? Well, I mean, I think there'll likely be some sharing and exchanging of data, and that data will, of course, probably inspire the design of other lounges, but also maybe allow these guys to refine the offering as they get more and more feedback from users. So there may be some tweaks, is what I'm saying, and I think that's what Mark sort of alluded to.
Yeah, I'm sure they will look at the numbers. I know where there's lounges like this, which is kind of run kind of as a partnership with other airlines, or run by a third-party operator for an airline. There are times that they will limit entry to, say, like the credit card users. So maybe if this is, if Air Canada does really expand or have quite a few times where it's quite busy. I know they're going to start flying again to Ottawa shortly. Right now they're only flying to Montreal out of the island airport, but Ottawa's coming back up here in a few months. So that if it gets busy, perhaps because they are partners, that maybe that's something we'll see. Maybe we'll see limitations on access. But I mean, it's a pretty big space, 133 person capacity is a pretty decent size lounge for a smaller airport like that. So, but like you said, I mean, this is all stuff that they're probably going to research and figure out. And I don't foresee any people being denied access, at least not anytime soon. But who knows? If a lot of the flights get expanded out of the airport, maybe that's something we'll see in the future.
Well, as you may know, we are in the middle of a mayoral race here in the city of Toronto. I know many of the candidates have spoken up about future Billy Bishop Airport. There's been controversy over the years just in terms of the residents that live around the space and expansion plans and so on and so forth. So it is an important little hub in the city. As somebody who's used it to fly to, New York, for example, before, I think it's a great airport with lots of potential. So, I'm hopeful that it will continue to thrive, and that we may very well see more services added to the airport.
That would be great. And I know they turned down the request to have jets fly in and out of there, but maybe that's something we'll see in the future as well. Because a lot of the newest technology is quieter than the turboprops.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like it's all going to come down to technology improving, and quieting some of these jets down, for sure. So, I would think that as soon as that's available, there'll be a strong push, because the city is only continuing to grow each in every year, and therefore the demand will of course continue to increase.
Awesome. That is all. Thank you so much, Jeff, for attending this event on behalf of Rewards Canada. I'm so excited to have you back on the podcast and starting to do more stuff for us again. It's always a pleasure. You and I have worked together. I mean, you used to be at Air Miles and we worked together. We're probably going on 15 years, if not longer.
I know, it's crazy, right?
so it's been a long relationship. So thank you so much. And hopefully our listeners are excited about this, our readers, that, we're going to see, kind of, I think we're going to get the ball rolling here again on kind of, the direction where Rewards Canada going. We're always, trying to try new things out. And Jeff is, like you said, Jeff spearheaded the podcast back in the day, and he always comes up with some great ideas. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, Patrick. It's been a pleasure rejoining you on this podcast, and we'll look to do many more moving forward. So thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you. And without further delay, here is Jeff's interview with Mark Nasr of Air Canada.
Why don't we start, Mark, by you telling us who you are and what you do?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Mark Nasr. I'm the Executive Vice President of Marketing and Digital at Air Canada. I'm also the President of Aeroplan.
Terrific. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mark. We're here today, of course, because you have just announced that you've got a partnership with Aspire. This is the new lounge that we're sitting in here at Billy Bishop Airport. Why don't you tell me a little bit about today's announcement?
For sure. Well, look, we're extremely excited. The corridor between Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal is obviously one of the most frequently traveled in Canada and the world. We seek to be able to provide premium experiences to our customers. And this was a missing spot in the network. There's a lot of our very frequent travelers that utilize Billy Bishop for downtown Toronto access, but of course also fly us out of Dorval or out of Pearson for their global travels.
Right.
But this airport is a little bit of a different kind of facility. It's a much smaller facility than most of the large airports in Canada. Of course, there's very limited space. And so we were, confronted with this challenge. How do we build and provide for a premium experience in an airport that has a very different dynamic? Mm-hmm. And the opportunity came along to partner with Swissport. It's a new model for us. It's a partnership on a lounge.
Yeah.
What we're able to do now is provide this fantastic experience. There's a fully serviced bar. Mm-hmm. There's a co-working area. There's sit-down lounge space. There's dining room space. There's a self-service buffet. There's a grab and go. So if you're even in the lounge for just a few minutes to get something quickly before boarding your flight, all of those are options available to you.
Right.
We also view this as a little bit of an experiment. We're quite confident this is going to work, but the question is it a model that's potentially scalable to other airports in Canada or maybe even other places in the world? Mm-hmm. So it's an Air Canada Café. Very similar to the one we opened in Toronto Pearson, and operated together with our partners at Swissport, Aspire.
Right, and as the release says here, it's the first joint lounge concept, and so the question is, can we expect more? I mean, is it this, as you say, is it a test pilot to see how it responds, and then, as you just mentioned, it's scalable, so can we expect to maybe see this model in other markets? Customers
will decide.
Yeah.
What's the feedback we get? What's the utilization we see? What are the dwell times, or the amount of time our customers are spending in the lounge? Yeah. We're going to take a look at all of those metrics, and of course the feedback we get out of it. We'll see what the write-ups are, then we'll talk to our friends at Swissport and perhaps take a look at what other options are available out there.
Great. Well, speaking of customers, let's talk a little bit about the profile of the average frequent traveler, even from, say, Toronto and Montreal. The sense is that these people, at least today, it's a just-in-time kind of departure, perhaps. Having a lounge like this now, I have to imagine, provides an opportunity to perhaps get there a little earlier. You have some great space that you can book, or you can work here before your flight. What does your research tell you about that frequent business traveler and their needs as it relates to a lounge like this?
For sure. So there's no doubt that one of the key selling points of the Billy Bishop facility is the fact that you can stay in downtown later and then come a little bit sooner before your flight and make your flight. It's just a smaller facility, very, very purpose-built for a specific kind of traffic. That being said, we do have people who are planners, customers who come to the airport a little earlier anyway. We do have this new facility that might drive some behavior change as you're expecting. Then, of course, this is a facility, as great as it is, that is subject to weather. And from time to time, there are flight delays, there are other considerations there. So just make sure that, whatever the scenario, there is a really comfortable option. But again, I'll point out the grab and go, which was the primary point of the Air Canada Café when we opened it in Toronto Pearson, is a key feature. So even those that are arriving, with maybe just 15 minutes, 30 minutes, prior to the boarding of their flight or whatever have you, that's still an option for them, to enter the lounge. Right at the front of the lounge, right after our concierge desk, is where the grab and go station exists. And you can make your way right out to the plane.
Yeah, no, I love the grab and go concept. To be clear, this lounge, of course, is open to everyone, right? That once you can pay to get in here if you're not an Air Canada member. Can you give me a sense of what one might expect by way of even volume in a space like this? Because this right now, I noticed that you've got capacity, I guess, for 133 seats. What's your general sense of how busy this lounge might get in peak season?
Well, we're certainly confident that we'll be able to accommodate our clientele out of the island here. And of course, it's all the same normal lounge access parameters that we have in the rest of the Air Canada, Maple Leaf, and Café lounge network. So what is that? It's 50K, 75K, and 100K Super Elite members of Aeroplan. It's also those that are flying on a business class ticket. Now, of course, we have single cabin Q400s out of the island, but we have folks that connect onwards from Montreal to other destinations. And so if they're in business class on their onwards connection or perhaps on one of our Star Alliance partners, and then all of the holders of our premium credit cards, particularly our flagship premium credit card of American Express. So all of those Air Canada customers are welcome in the lounge. We think we are very comfortably capacitized to be able to handle that traffic. In terms of others that might choose to use the lounge with some of the Aspire, Swissport welcome mechanisms, we'll see. As I said, this lounge is a bit of an experiment, and certainly a test and learn, one that, again, we're comfortable from our customers, will be very much able to accommodate. We'll see what the demand is, and then we'll always be there along with Swissport to optimize, or adjust as we need to.
Yeah. I guess, Mark, it's a very impressive space. I'm quite curious to hear from you on what some of your favorite features are.
For sure. Oh,
yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So I would call out, I think, three things.
Yeah.
Right. First of all, if you haven't been able to tell yet, I am really partial to the grab and go concepts.
Yeah.
I've said before, I think gone are the days where lounges try to police removing food or beverage.
Yeah.
There still obviously are facilities in cases where that's applicable just because the lounges weren't necessarily designed for this new world. But going forward, everything we build, and everything we design, we very much want to have some kind of capability like that.
Right.
So the grab and go is a key spot. We do freshly baked goods in this lounge. So it happens in the back. And whether it's pastries in the morning or some other savories in the afternoon and evening, just being able to offer freshly baked goods, I think, is an outstanding feature. I do have a little bit of a Pillsbury doughboy in me, as you can tell here. And then I'd call it the third thing. It's a properly staffed bar. There's a large screen HD TV. Live events, sports news, whatever of the day will be on there, and the ability to go up to the bar, get a proper cocktail or nice glass of wine or champagne even. That ability is there, and to enjoy some live events. So those are my three favorite features.
Those are your three favorite. Well, I can tell you the coffee is also a nice feature. Just checking that out before we sat down. It's a pretty funky, modern-looking coffee machine hooked up to an iPad.
I don't often drink coffee, but when I do, it comes from an iPad.
Nice line. Very good. The other thing I want to get your comment on is the aesthetic. I mean, this is a pretty impressive looking space by way of design. What can you tell me, if anything, about the firm that you guys use to help design this beautiful space? Now, I know it's Aspire and that sort of thing, but did you guys have any input Any thoughts on how this beautiful space was put together?
I've got to give credit to Aspire. They took the lead on the design here. We certainly did have some input, and you'll notice our branding, throughout the facility and on the signage outside, some other elements there. But Aspire was absolutely the lead on this, and I think they did a spectacular job. We're sitting here looking in this private office and meeting room we've got. But what I'd also say is that going forward, we see a real opportunity to upgrade and expand the Air Canada lounge network. And there are design ideas and elements that are in this lounge that you will certainly see make their way through as a read through to additional opportunities going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just noticing a few of them, Mark. When you think about how one might use this space before a flight, whether it's I've got to take a call, I need a little private space. There is a workstation here that you can close the door to. We are in a meeting room right now that one can close the door to. These are nice features if one is trying to get a little work or take a private call before a flight. Otherwise, there's a lot of little nooks that you can slide into and get some work done, which is obviously a key feature to a lounge. I noticed here, too, there's a number of sustainability features that are in this lounge that are first of their kind, LEED certified. Again, it seems like nothing was spared by way of design here. Is there anything by way of, again, research that your customers, your Aeroplan customers, have told you that they love about a lounge? Do they have a top 5 or list of things that they absolutely love to see in lounges across the network?
Well, first, just if I could comment on the sustainability component. So at Air Canada, we have a commitment by 2030 to lower our total greenhouse gas emissions by 30% from ground operations over 2019. So effectively, we're going to grow the airline over the course of the 2020s, and yet we will be 30% lower than in 2019. Terrific. So even lower on a unit basis. Lounges are just one component of thinking about ground operations, right? And certainly they're not the biggest contributor. We have, other areas that will have a lot more value to tackle. But along with us and our partners, there really is a sincere commitment to look at everything we can do, whether it's how we do heating and cooling within the facility, even the light bulbs that we're using, the materials that we're using, both for furniture and design, but as well as for things like how we're serving food and beverage. You'll notice, for example, we've got the Vivro water treatment device here, which we're actually introducing in our Maple Leaf lounges as well. We're eliminating hundreds of thousands of individual water bottles, and of course we can serve hot, cold, room temperature, gas, or flat. So it's a very good experience, and it makes a real difference. So I'll just comment on that if I could.
You know what? Listen, take your time on this because this is a very important point. I'm a big believer in the sustainability movement and the work that needs to be done to hit these targets, as you say. So this lounge being an example, I mean, again, I highlighted the fact that it was the first LEED certified lounge in the Swissport's international network of 83 Aspire lounges. That's a pretty impressive stat, and maybe that's a sign that this is exactly the new standard that these folks are going to look to establish, and I guess their values line up with your values from a sustainability perspective is what I'm hearing.
Oh, certainly. And whether, it's, as you think about the conversations we have with partners and suppliers going forward, be it Boeing and Airbus at the very, very top, all the way to our seat manufacturers like Collins, and all the way down to, the airport experience and the lounges and the airport authorities. Yeah. We're trying to have these conversations with as many of our partners as possible. And it certainly feels like a shared ethos.
Absolutely. But then let's talk about your customers, because, I have some friends that are, huge, they're big fans on trying to live a more sustainable life and reduce their carbon footprint. Where they struggle is they may have an electric vehicle, but then they go and take a bunch of flights and go, well, I've just wiped out all my, my savings from the flights. There's a tension there that exists with people that have that consciousness about them, about, reducing their carbon footprint, but yet they still travel as much as they do. I know efforts are being made from organizations like yours to reduce those overall greenhouse gas emissions. I guess the more that all these organizations can do at every step of the way to address climate change and make more sustainable products and services, all the better, right?
Absolutely. And, one comment I'll make there, we believe it was an industry first, although I'll have to double check on that. But 100% of all of the redemptions for Air Canada Flight Awards from Aeroplan are actually fully offset, and that's provided by Air Canada, and it's actually partially funded from our partners in the U.S. Chase, with our co-brand there. And so, we certainly, there is tremendous additional work to do. There's no doubt about it. And for aviation, the key thing really is building up the supply of sustainable aviation fuel, because that is going to make a very real difference. And there's still a large question as to how we get the supply up to where it needs to be to have the impact we want it to have. But again, every facet of what we look at, especially as you think about kind of the frequent flyers that you just mentioned, they can certainly take heart that we're taking steps. And, about Aeroplan specifically, that 100% of the GHG emissions associated with Aeroplan flight redemptions in Air Canada are fully offset automatically.
Great.
So you'd ask about the favorite lounge features of our customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, look, different people use lounges for different reasons.
Yep.
And it also depends on why you're traveling, right? So you with your children or, spouse or whatever versus solo, and there's a different priority. Certainly food and beverage consistently comes out as a key factor. So I guess that's two, food and beverage, because some people consider them separately. Some people really focused on beverage, others really focused on food, some on both. But making sure also that there's space, making sure that there's a high quality internet connection, for sure. On our international properties or for the big connecting hubs, showers are a key feature. Pardon me. And then also making sure that there's additional support available in the lounge, right? So the lounge isn't just the product as relaxing or enjoying or eating or whatever, but the lounge is also a place where if you need customer service, we've got obviously dedicated agents and concierges in our properties that are able to provide that service without having to go into the terminal and see a gate or a customer service center. So those, typically punch out as being the top sought after features in lounge and what we design for primarily.
Yeah, and look, just picking up on the food and beverage and grab and go. Boy, if the number of folks that often complain when they arrive at the airport, need to grab a bite, know that in many cases flights have reduced what's offered on the aircraft, and then next thing you know, they've spent $100 for a couple sandwiches and a few some bottled water. That is a pain point. The overall travel experience, internationally, I imagine. So I'm not surprised to hear it at the sort of top of the list of things that matter. And it's nice to know that you've got this this well-designed, well-thought-out idea around grab and go, because I can imagine that's going to keep the experience favorable for most people.
That's certainly an experience we want to keep pushing, and you'll see as our next set of lounges and design come, particularly next year, and really call out, and thereafter, you'll see an emphasis on the grab and go on our side.
Awesome. I just a couple quick questions left here. I guess. As far as this lounge is now fully operational as of June 1st today, is there anything that you're hoping to see over the first, say, couple months that will allow you to either tweak the experience or feedback loop that you're looking to kind of pay close attention to over maybe the summer?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, look, we have a customer satisfaction survey that comes out after every flight. And there's a section in it that talks about lounges. And so we'll be looking extra closely for YTZ, for Billy Bishop departures, on that. Okay. And, like you said, it's a new property, a new team here. So the smooth operations of the lounge and, what gets consumed, which area, we've got, if you think about it, there's 5 separate spaces, because we've got the lounge style seats, we've got the dining tables, we've got the working room, we've got the meeting room, we've got the bar area, right? So looking at what gets used and what gets filled first, assuming the lounge is on the busier side too at certain points. So those are the kinds of things we'll be looking for.
Well, I'd also be very interested, if I was in your position, perhaps to understand how long people are in this lounge, because, again, I think of this airport as one where people are getting here just in time, hopping on that flight. If they start to learn that there's a beautiful lounge, like this is a beautiful lounge available for them and their use, does it mean that they're now starting to change their behavior, coming to the airport a little earlier, hunkering down, staying in this space, half an hour before the flight or whatever the case may be? So
I'll tell you something. I can tell you empirically, because we have the data, that's exactly what we've seen with the signature suites.
Okay.
So for the signature suites, customers are coming 50% earlier on average, just around 53% actually, than they were prior to the suite being opened.
Okay.
The customers that are suite eligible and use the suite.
All right.
So certainly in Vancouver and in Toronto, the signature suites have had that effect.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah. Terrific. Mark, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Great conversation. And congratulations. This is a nice... certainly a nice addition to your overall network of lounges, isn't it? And I guess I think a lot of people are going to be interested to see whether or not more is to come with this partnership with Aspire.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
That was a really good interview, Jeff. Thank you for conducting it and for representing Rewards Canada at this lounge opening event. And a special thank you to Mark Nasr of Air Canada for providing the interview and such great information within it. And that's all she wrote for this episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. I hope you have enjoyed it. Be sure to help spread the word so that we keep bringing you the best loyalty rewards content in Canada. Share the podcast, hit the like button, leave a 5-star review on your favorite listening platform. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button and the notification bell so you know when all our new videos and episodes come out on that platform. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll talk to you next time. The Rewards Canada podcast is produced in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, with music produced by Regina's own TWKOP.